So I'm Maddie and I'm Head of Delivery at Fabric. And today I'm just here to facilitate the webinar. So if there's anything you need, stick it in the Q&A box and I'll get back to you. But we will be hosting sort of a Q&A session at the end. So if you do have any questions on objectives or anything at all, Lisa will be around to answer them then as well. So I will hand over to Lisa and she can get started.
Thank you, Maddie, and a massive welcome to everybody. So I thought I'd start by introducing myself a touch for anybody who doesn't know me. Obviously, my name is Lisa Eaton. I'm the Managing Director and founder of Unwritten Group, which is a strategic marketing and communications agency, and more recently, the founder of Fabric Academy, which is a marketing training academy. And I have been building marketing strategies and delivering them for businesses of all shapes and sizes all over the globe for the last 20 years almost, and with great success. And I guess the reason for building Fabric Academy is when I started out in my career, there just wasn't the practical support for marketers to really teach them about how to implement strategic work in their organization. Marketing was very tactile. It was all about lovely brochures, gorgeous websites, and lovely brand and so on, which was all very important. But over the last sort of 12 to 15 years, marketers and marketing departments have become much more accountable for their spend. And rightly so, you know, businesses are investing in marketing and they invest heavily, and marketing should produce results that the business can really then use to fuel its growth and to reinvest back in marketing. So I guess today is all about trying to give you some practical tips, some tools, some advice in terms of how to build the most effective marketing strategy, which is what we teach on the course at Fabric. But today is all about the very starting point, which is where people sometimes get this bit wrong. And I guess this is the question I get asked most from marketers whenever I'm doing coaching or mentoring or working with businesses, and that they just don't think business objectives plays a part in a marketing strategy, or marketers just don't think it's part of their role. So I'm afraid I'm here to tell you that that's not the truth. It is part of your role, and it's not the easiest thing as a marketer to do, but it is doable, and it does make a huge difference to both your role and also the impact your marketing has on the business. So I'm going to share my screen with you. I'm going to take you through some slides over the next half an hour. I'm going to talk non-stop and hopefully give you lots of useful guidance along the way. And then we're going to open to a Q&A at the end, so you can ask me anything, throw anything my way. I'll do my very best to use my 20 years of experience to give you as much information as I can to help you. So without further ado, hopefully everybody can see that now. And this webinar, as you well know, is all about how to get clarity on your business objectives before starting your marketing strategy. So I'm just going to start with a stat, which I'm not sure if many will be surprised or not, but essentially this is a staggering stat and real evidence to why business objectives are so important. So those who set objectives are 376% more likely to report success over those who didn't, which is a study from HubSpot from 2019 of over 3,000 marketers. So it's crucial to make sure that business objectives are at the heart of everything you do, because if you have them in mind from the very beginning, you're much more likely to be able to work towards them and smash them, essentially. So it sounds really obvious, but I guess this is a stage where I see lots of marketers skip, or they just don't take the time to kind of really dig into the business objectives here for lots of different reasons. You know, financials are sometimes a little out of their realm. Sometimes the senior management team keep them quite hidden, or they're not publicly available to the wider team. Sometimes it's just not knowing that these play such a crucial part in the strategy. So obviously the plan is to try and share some information with you here to help you achieve this goal, and to make it easier, but also to build the foundations of a really brilliant strategy for the businesses that you're in. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to cover how to get clarity on your business objectives, and we're going to cover how to set them from scratch if you're in an organization that doesn't have these already defined or hasn't shared them, or you're a business owner and you're looking to start and build your own strategy, and you want to help start that with the business objectives in mind. I'm going to talk a little bit about difficult conversations. So sometimes it can be tough to get this information out of your senior team. They don't understand why the marketing department need the financials. So just a little bit of advice and help around that. And then how to set achievable marketing and comms goals that are aligned to the business objectives. So that's everything we're going to cover in half an hour. There is a whole lot here. So I'm going to rattle through it as quickly as I can to try and give you as much value as possible. And then we'll answer any questions at the end. So before we get going, hopefully everybody has now had an email with the objectives toolkit, or you have downloaded it. If you haven't, this is really useful to have throughout this entire webinar. So Maddie's going to pop the link to this in the chat now, which you should all see appear in a moment. If you can go onto this link and just download this, just needs your email address in and it'll give you access to it straight away. But this is really crucial for working through not just the webinar here that we're in today, but leaving this and being able to put some of this into practice. So if you can get that downloaded, that would be amazing. So why do business objectives matter to marketers? Well, objectives should be forefront of mind during every aspect of strategic planning. You should always have the bigger business objective in mind when making reactive decisions or when planning strategy around marketing. This should be key drivers in everything that you do. So making decisions on the spot, on the day, on the week, with data that's just suddenly come in, reacting to a market change. It's a huge part of an active marketer's role. But without the bigger picture, without an idea of what you're trying to achieve or where you're trying to go, it's so difficult to make the right decisions. So your business objectives help you as a marketer in giving you confidence around this is the right thing to do because of this is investment needs to go here because it's going to drive us here. So having these objectives will really, really help ensure that you make the right decisions. It will make you a better marketer through and through because you'll have insight that is so important to making sure your marketing works for the business. And it will help you drive success within the organization. And we'll come on to this a little bit later in terms of how you use this evidence to show the importance and the value of your role, but the marketing function as well. But it will help you drive that real kind of success. So we're going to run a very quick poll now, and hopefully you will all see the poll appear on your screens, and there's 4 options to choose from. So if I could just ask everybody to quickly select the answer that is applicable to them. So do you currently know what business objectives you're working towards? So, you know, some of you might say 100% yes, that's unusual, but amazing if so. Some will have a good idea. Some just feel like their finance team or their chief exec won't necessarily share them. So the business knows them, but the marketing team or you don't know them. And some organizations just don't have it defined. So I'm seeing the answers rolling in here, really interesting. We're going to share these results with you in a quick second, and I'm just going to talk you through some of the answers here. So you'll see that there is the odd 1 or 2 who have them defined. Amazing, that's exactly what we're looking for. Some people have an idea, so I think this is probably representative of where most people sit. They've got a vague idea, but not necessarily fully clarified. Some organizations just don't have their objectives defined. So if you're in a business that already has the business objectives defined and they've shared them, that's amazing. As a marketer, I guess what's really important there is that you understand them. You feel like they're achievable given the resource that you have, the time, the budget. So you feel like that, that you can work towards them. And that you know that you're going to be able to control some of the outputs that will help achieve them. So those of you who said yes or have a fair idea, we're just making sure that we fully understand them, we can get behind them and we can understand them. Those of you who don't have them agreed or your organization doesn't have them, honestly, you are not alone, so don't panic. I work with so many businesses all the time, some really, really big, huge, ambitious businesses that still don't have this information defined. So there is a really easy way to do this if your business doesn't have it or your organization doesn't have it defined. I'm going to take you through that. But what I would say here is just this is the place to dig your heels in. Don't drive into tactical planning, to reactive methods, or to build a strategy without this, just because your organization doesn't have them yet defined. The trick here is to stick with this. You really spend some time defining this, and you will get there eventually, and it will make your strategy all the more effective and better for being able to do that. So I'm just going to get rid of this, and we're going to move on. So Maddie, if you can just shut that poll for me, there we go. Perfect. So getting clarity on your business objectives. So the next thing, oh, that poll's just appeared again. Maddie, can you just close that poll for me?
Sorry, it keeps popping up.
Let's just get rid of that. Perfect. So getting clarity on your business objectives. The idea here is to understand the whole spectrum of objectives that your organization is working to. Now, these are normally made up of two things. So both the long-term kind of vision of the company and what we would call the long objectives, and the short-term goals. That's the here, the now, what's happening in the next quarter, the next 6 months, or the next year ahead. So short-term goals are usually right now. So your benchmark piece where you're currently sitting, what your company wants to achieve in the next month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, often sometimes up to 24 months in advance. So these are usually financial projections more than anything, or can be linked to a financial objective. But understanding what you're looking to achieve in the here and now is really crucial. But as importantly, and again, this is somewhere that sometimes we miss this type of stuff, is understanding the long-term goal of the organization. And these are things that tend to affect the culture, the vision, the direction of where a company is going to go, new markets, acquisitions, potential new services or products. So really understanding both the short-term goals, which is the here and now, and the long-term goals of where the business is looking to go. So I'm just going to dig into each of these a little bit to hopefully give you some ideas of what short-term goals might look like for you, and some questions that you can start to ask your senior team around starting to define these. So short-term goals. So financial, we're talking about turnover and sales targets here. Whether you're in a business or whether you're in an organization or a charitable, the third sector charitable organization, whenever we're referring to, I guess, business here, it could be for any organization. So turnover and sales targets could relate to all of those. We'll also want to look here at where are we currently, so what we would call a benchmark. So what's our current position, and what are our projections? So what are we looking to aim towards in the next 12 months, say? So an understanding of our current position and what we're looking to achieve in terms of turnover. The same goes for gross and net profit. So what levels of profit is the organization looking to make, or to retain or to grow? Same information again, so the here and now, so where we currently are and what we're looking to achieve. Are we looking to retain that? Are we looking to grow that? And what does that figure look like? Percentage uplift targets, so these are really useful when we're starting to measure the impact of the marketing against some of these financial targets. So if we're currently at X amount, do we want to raise that by 10%, 15%, 20%? What is our uplift target that we're looking to achieve in terms of that growth piece? Timescales and milestones, so really important. And again, sounds like a really obvious one, but can often be missed. Marketers can sometimes presume that it's by the end of the financial year or the calendar year, but just really having that conversation with your senior team around when do we want to achieve this? What are the key milestones in order for us to get there? And how are we going to map them out? And it's really useful under timescales and milestones also to understand when your financial year runs from and to. Lots of you will already know this information, but if you don't, again, really important question to ask around financial year dates. And then each organization will have its own specific goals, which will be relevant to the organization itself. So these could be things like number of customers, number of products sold, average order value, customer lifetime value, really starting to dig into some specific short-term goals here in terms of what you're looking to achieve. And keeping in mind always the benchmark, which is the current position, and the projection, so where you want to get to in what time frame. Now you'll see in the objectives toolkit that you've got, there is a section here which will take you through some questions and an area where you can start to plot some of this. So some guidance here in your workbook or your toolkit in order to how to ask these questions. A little bit of advice here, if anybody's struggling to get this information out of their senior team, often the perception here is that the marketing team don't need to know this information, or that this is senior level information only in the business. I would always be armed with the questions that you want to ask your senior team before you go to them, but also really importantly, the reason why you need that information. So the justification piece. And so if there's any pushback, if you start to get your chief exec or your finance director saying, why is this important? Why do you need to know this? You're ready and armed with the answer as to why this information is crucial. And that's all around building an effective strategy that aims to meet those business goals and help drive growth. So on to long-term goals here. So what is the long-term vision of the organization? So questions that we really probably need to know from the senior marketing team here, or the senior chief exec. This is really understanding where is the business going, what is the plan in the long term. It's not necessarily financially always this is much more the vision piece, but really understanding where the business is and what journey it's on. What problem is your organization looking to solve? So why do you exist in the marketplace? What's your proposition? Why is your organization important? So why is it, why are you doing what you do? What problems do you solve for your customers? And why is it crucial that you're able to communicate that and build on that? What difference do you want to make in the world? So why are you doing what you're doing? And what impact is it going to have on the world around you? And a really important question here for your senior team: what does success look like, and how will you know that you've achieved it? So this is always a great one, and it's not an easy one for all senior people or founders of businesses to answer, but it really provokes thought. It starts to really think about what success looks like. So how will we know when we've made it? How will we know that we're on the right track to where our bigger future lies? So again, all questions that are in your workbook or your toolkit, but again, really good kind of foundational questions to start using when you're talking to your senior team and structuring those tricky conversations. So I'm going to share a couple of examples with you here, just to give you an idea of how granular you can get with some of these objectives and those that are a little bit more visionary. So starting with a business-to-business organization, our short-term objective could be to scale the business by 20% this year. And a long-term objective might be to break into a new sector, secure 10 new target sector clients by 2024, and achieve an overall target of 24% growth. So you can see there how the short-term objective plays a huge part in the long-term objective, and how you can start to marry the two together in order to make sure that we're on the right path to achieving the long-term objective. If you're in a business-to-consumer business, this might look a little bit different. So if our short-term objective is, say, to launch 5 new products by the end of the financial year, our long-term objective might be to ensure that a range of our best-selling products are sold in 5 of the leading supermarkets by 2025. Now, obviously, you can see the difference there between things that you can start to do in the immediate and those that are much longer-term relationship nurturing pieces, or are going to take a much longer-term investment, but essentially is going to help us achieve our overarching business objective. And if you're in a charitable organisation in the third sector or not-for-profit, a short-term objective could be something like to secure X amount of funding in order to provide temporary housing for vulnerable people. So that's what we're working on right here and right now. But our long-term objective is to end rough sleeping by 2024. So you can see that these can be a mix of real specifics in terms of timescales, financials, percentages, monetary values, but they can also be very visionary based, like the rough sleeping example. But it's about making sure that they're tangible, that we really understand them, that we know when they need to be achieved by, and we know exactly what we're working towards. So no room for grey areas here, being super, super clear. So I guess we talk about how we start to align our marketing objectives, having built a series of business objectives. And if we've got these business objectives in mind, it's so important that we use them. And it's so important that we're able to distill them down to translate them into marketing and communication goals that we as marketers can really make happen. And when you make them happen, you can really see how it starts to affect and impact the business in a positive way. So I'm going to show you a little example here of how to align the goals from an organizational objective or a business objective to a marketing and comms objective. Now, these are obviously really specific, dependent on the organization that you're working in, but the idea is here to give you a real insight into how the two link. So let's say, for example, our organization's objective is to increase profits by 20k this year. Now, what we want to look at here is our current benchmark position. Where are we sitting financially at the moment? And what does that percentage increase need to look like in order to raise that extra 20%? And so once we do that calculation, we understand the difference between the two figures and what the uplift is, we can translate that uplift into our marketing and communications objective. So we can start to say, as marketers, we know that our objective is to increase profits through marketing functions. So that could be through e-com sales, it could be driving footfall to a venue, it could be ticket sales, it could be all sorts of different things. But we know that it's our job to raise profits through marketing activity by 17%. And if we raise by 17%, the organization has hit its objective of extra 20k from there. In terms of a long-term goal, so how we might link a long-term objective to our marketing objective, let's say that we're an organization that needs to refurbish the facility. And the idea behind that is that we're going to create a better space for everybody who comes into contact with our venue within 3 years. So our long-term objective is really to create that wonderful workspace or visitor attraction space. But our marketing objective is how to make that happen. How do we as marketers help towards that much bigger piece? We can't refurbish the property. We can't just drive people there whilst it's under refurb. So how do we help make sure that objective is met? So an idea here around how this could happen is we as marketers set ourselves an objective to generate £300,000 of income via donations to this year's refurbishment, and that will help cover a third of the costs, say. And it gives us some real structured focus as marketers there to really understand where our tactics need to lie. So if we know we've got to generate 300k in income via donations, we're going to need some sort of fundraising campaign, and we're going to need a campaign to go out really, really strong and hard, but all around this kind of long-term vision of refurbing the facility and making this space a better place to be. So you can see how the two objectives really start to come together, and you can see that your marketing and comms objectives here aren't just a shot in the dark. They're not you just hoping that this is the right thing to do. It's not you guessing where your efforts or your budgets should be focused. It's about really plotting your objectives around what the big picture is for the business or the organization, and distilling that down into bite-sized chunks or goals in terms of how you can help make that happen. And the really great thing about this, when this works, it works like magic, it really does. And it gives you the evidence as a marketer to demonstrate your value in the business, to demonstrate why the investment in marketing is so important, and also the impact that the marketing function, or the marketing lead, has on the overall business. So this gives you great evidence for just really valuing and defining that role. So once we've got our objectives set, or we've got an idea of what they look like, it's really important that we start to build them out so that they're fully defined. The last thing that we want to be working with is a really fluffy objective that has some grey area around it. We can't always understand if we've met it. Is that success? Is it not success? So we have what we call the SMART framework, which we live and breathe by at Fabric. If you've never come across this, I'm going to show you what it looks like, and we can send you a little graph of this as well. But it's really simple. So make sure that your goal is specific. It should be clearly defined with absolutely no room for grey areas. So we definitely don't want any room for slippage here, but we also don't want any room to say, I kind of met that, but I'm not entirely sure. So we want the goal to be absolutely specific. We want the goal to be measurable. So we want a specific way to evaluate and understand if we've met that goal. How do we evaluate it? How do we quantify it? And are we able to report on it? So always making sure that our goal is measurable. It needs to be achievable. I mean, that sounds really obvious, but it needs to be ambitious. We need to be able to be, it needs to produce growth and, you know, a progression from where we were. But it's also no point in setting crazy, unrealistic targets that we just know, given the times or the budgets or the resource, we're just not going to be able to hit. So they should always be achievable, ambitious, definitely, but definitely within reach. They should be relevant. So this is where we link the business objectives again. You know, they have to be relevant to making an impact. We need to know that if they're met, they're going to move the dial. They're going to make way or pave way towards that bigger objective. So make sure that they're absolutely relevant in terms of our overarching piece. And my favorite, because I love a deadline, they should be time bound. So, you know, the goals should be set with a clear deadline in mind of when they need to be hit and when they need to be met. You'll see from some of the examples that I set before, and again in the toolkit that you've got, the examples that we've shown you are absolutely live and breathe by this SMART framework. You know, there's measurables in there, there's finances in there, there's a time relevant to when it has to be met. It relates back to the overarching business objectives. So have a little look at some of those examples in your toolkit, and you'll see that each one of them meets kind of the criteria for the SMART framework. So from there, we start to move on to mapping priorities. And I guess this is where some people jump in pretty quickly. But what we use is a little graph here, which is a really useful little kind of visual prompt when planning priorities. And this is all about planning tactics and understanding how relevant your tactic is to the marketing and comms objective and also to the overarching business objective. So we use this little grid to start to plan out some of the tactics, thinking about your objectives. So the grid, which runs from top to bottom, is it going to have a high impact on your objective, or is it going to have a low impact on that objective? And the effort graph gives you an idea of the time and the resource that's going to go into delivering that particular tactic. So once you've plotted out some of your tactics, or just used this grid to say, actually, that sits in the top right-hand corner, high impact, low effort, we know that's a quick win. We know that's going to move our marketing and comms objective and therefore move our business objective. If our tactic is sitting in the bottom corner, so it's sitting as low impact but high effort, it's a tactic to potentially reconsider. So we don't think it's necessarily going to move our business objective without a lot of effort, and we don't necessarily think it's going to move on to hit our business objective. So it gives you an idea of one, prioritizing tactics, but also those that are going to really help drive to meet the business objectives and the marketing and comms objectives. So again, you'll see this little grid in your toolkit. It's a great little kind of useful kind of tool to have. And sometimes when you're just starting to plan priorities and tactics, as you start to get into the more strategic planning and operational sides, use this to remind yourself. Often what I do with this, I have the business objectives written along the top, and I'm always continuously thinking, right, is this tactic a quick win? Is it going to have high impact? And is it going to have low effort? And, you know, not everything's going to sit in that top corner, and it shouldn't, things should be equally split, but it's definitely a tool to use to help decide which priorities are going to have the most impact. So next steps, we are going to open to a Q&A now. I've rattled through that pretty quickly, so hopefully it hasn't blown anybody's mind, but given you lots of food for thought. We're also going to, after the Q&A, I'm going to follow up with everybody to see if anybody wants a one-to-one on this. So I know this topic isn't talked about all that much in marketing. I know there's not a lot of support around business objectives for marketers. So I'm happy to take this conversation a little bit further. If you're thinking, oh God, yeah, this sounds great, but actually how do I apply it to my business, or how can I put it into practice? Or if you've just got questions that you don't want to share with the group here, I'm happy to do this in a follow-up call on a one-to-one basis. And as a little aside from that, obviously Fabric was built to help marketers really get to grips with this stuff. Business objectives is the very first part of building a strategy. So our April cohort opens, well, it's open for delegates now, and it starts on the 26th of April. So if anybody's any interest in the Fabric program, you just need to give us a little shout. So I'm going to stop my share, and I'm going to hope Maddie returns. And we're going to open to a Q&A session that Maddie is going to facilitate now.
Yes, so we've had quite a few questions in.
So you just stopped, Maddie, there we go.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Good. We've got quite a few questions in, but if anyone has any more, there's still time, so just stick them in the Q&A box. So the first question is from Emma. And it is, how do you get an audience in front of your senior team if they don't view marketing as a priority?
Okay, really good question. So I would always hope that if there is a marketing role within the business, or there is a budget allocated to marketing, that your senior team does value marketing in some instance. I guess there's always a lot of questions around how valuable is marketing in a business, and we know that often in times that are tough, marketing is one of the first things to get cut. So it's super important that you have your senior team on board and understand how important marketing is in terms of business growth. And, you know, we talk constantly about this being an absolute crucial part of every business's strategy. You know, marketing is what drives your inbound leads. So it is, you know, when it's done right, the investment pays off tenfold. But if you don't feel like there's that real understanding of the value in I guess, the senior team, where I have always found it really, really useful is in the evidence. So every single little bit of marketing that you do should be measurable, as we've just talked about there. So there should be an overarching plan of what you're trying to achieve. Then your marketing and comms goal, how you're going to achieve it by your particular department or function. Then there's got to be your benchmark, where you are now and where you're looking to get to. And when you've got that evidence, it is like gold dust. It literally is. So this is what your senior team are interested in. They're not interested in the, you know, the fluffy stuff around marketing, the lovely graphics, the content, you know, the tactics that go into it. They're interested in the results. And if you can demonstrate to your senior team that we've spent X amount here, but it has generated X amount in inbound inquiries or potential sales leads or new customers or online sales, that will make them sit up and take notice. So it's not an easy thing to do. It differs in every business depending on the level of understanding or the level of interest that some of the senior teams have. But the evidence for me is absolutely where you capture that attention. And it's where you demonstrate your value in the business. It's your evidence for a promotion or a pay rise or, you know, a bigger investment in your marketing department, more staff, more money to invest in the tactical side. The evidence literally is everything. So for me, that if you can't have these conversations without backing them up with stats, it can sometimes feel a little bit fluffy, but the senior team will absolutely respect the stats, understand the stats, and that's where you'll get their attention and their interest.
Awesome. So the next question is from someone who works in a large organisation that has a lot of different departments, but the marketing department sort of spans across them all. So how would you go about defining objectives for that kind of organisation? Would you have different ones for each, or?
So I guess this is probably something that we teach in the Fabric program, and important in terms of objective setting, that get your senior team to agree them as a whole once they've been defined. So this is often, if there's lots of departments, and certainly within a big corporate, there will be likely heads of departments that will have their own objectives. They may not even be thinking about the wider business objectives. They're looking at their P&L or increasing their staff or bringing a new product to market. So often that can happen. But it's about bringing that senior team together, not disregarding anybody's individual objectives, but facilitating a conversation that understands each of the individual objectives of the departments or the department heads, breaking them down and really understanding where they play an impact on the business objective, and then moving them from your business objective into the marketing and comms objective. Said objective about 15 times there. But, that's what it's all about. You can't have, a head of finance just wanting, P&L improvement, and you can't have a head of product just wanting a whole load of new product lines, and you're trying to meet both without knowing what the overarching business objective is. They're likely both to play a part somewhere, but that conversation of facilitating all those senior leaders is really, really important. And once they're agreed, they need to agree them as a senior team. They need to sign them off. We always suggest having in your marketing and comms plan your business objectives with a physical signature at the bottom, which it sounds like a little bit of overkill, but it works. It really does make people think importantly around what are we aiming for, and am I willing to put everything behind making this goal happen if the marketing department do their job. So it's definitely a trickier place to be. You're likely juggling lots of people who have all got different types of agendas, their own priorities, their own objectives, but it is your job as a marketer to facilitate that, to bring them together, to understand them, distill them into those bigger overarching business objectives, and then break them down into your marketing objectives, and then get the agreement. So make sure everybody's on board.
Next up, we have a question from someone who is also in a large organisation. So they say it's not possible to get absolute clarity on business goals in time to plan for the year ahead. So as a marketer, I have to make assumptions. How would you recommend getting more clarity in this situation?
Yeah, so I get asked this loads actually, and it's a really important question. So this isn't all about having your objectives for the financial year ahead or the calendar year ahead. If your business is working through their projections for the next financial year and you're stuck in the thick of it, having to actually act and do tactical delivery, don't wait on those objectives being set. Get stuck into what is the here and now. What is this year's objectives? What are we currently working to? Have we met them? And what has our uplift been there? If we haven't met them, how much more do we need to do before our target ends? If we've smashed them, how much more can we do to really, really progress them? But we get pushback a lot from kind of finance departments or senior management teams who say the targets haven't been set yet, the business objectives haven't been set yet, we're still working through the finances, and the marketers are expected still to hit the ground running and perform. Mm-hmm. I think it's about educating that senior team that, don't worry if the final detail hasn't been agreed yet, but what does the here and now look like? What are we still working to as a business? And even pose the question, what is it likely to look like? Or, what are you, they will have some sort of idea of what the new projections are going to look like, or what shape they're taking. You can be given those when they're fully defined and you can adjust. But if you're working blind up until you've got those, you literally are working blind. You've got no clue on what you're working towards. So some targets, whether they're fully defined and agreed or not, are much better than no targets. So just get ready to kind of push back on your senior team to say completely fine that they're not agreed yet or not finally defined, but give me an idea of what we're working towards, or at least give me the here and now.
Cool. So we have a question in from Thea, who said, how can you best demonstrate the impact raising brand awareness has on overall business objectives? So, for example, helping the team understand that investing in paid media is worth it to raise the profile. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have a direct correlation on the objectives.
Yeah. Cool. So really interesting one, Thea. And this is, I guess, where sometimes can get fluffy in terms of marketing spiel. And I guess this is why the SMART objectives are really important to build out each of those pieces in terms of how it works to that overarching piece. So as you rightly said, say our business objective is to raise brand awareness. there will be some sort of marketing and comms objective that sits under that, and probably an objective above it. Why are we looking to raise brand awareness? So it's often a financial goal. You know, we want to raise brand awareness so that we get more customers, we engage with more of our audience, you know, we leapfrog the competition, that our products are well known. You know, there's always an underarching or underlying reason as to why you want to raise that brand awareness. So brand awareness is fluffy on its own. It needs some specifics underneath it, and it needs drilling down into what you're really looking to achieve from brand awareness. So I would say start there. It's fine to have a big overarching objective as raise brand awareness, but why? What does success look like if we do that? And then you can start to build down the pipe there of some measurables against let's say it's inbound leads. So we want to raise brand awareness in order to increase inbound leads into the business or the organization. Then our measurable is around inbound leads. So our marketing and comms goal translates to an increase in inbound leads by 20% in order to help meet this objective here. And so it's really trying to distill it. Anything that's not deemed as fluffy, but it doesn't meet the SMART framework is really hard to evidence. But every big visionary goal that is a bit fluffy will have a real specific objective behind it. So it's trying to use those ones that aren't so defined and build them down into smaller chunks that do define it. And building brand awareness is a really important one for almost every organization on the planet, you know. So it's starting to look at things of you know, that you can measure against that. So, you know, what is your current market share and position, and how will you know if you've got a bigger market share or a bigger market position from the work that you do around brand awareness? So there's a measurement piece there. Where are we currently now in market share, and where do we want to be in 12 months? There's a piece around inbound leads that I spoke about. Sometimes brand awareness can be about speaker opportunities. So, you know, we're trying to raise brand awareness, and we're going to do that by a speaker opportunity so that we're approached by the media to act as thought leaders, comment pieces. We see more traffic to our website because we're raising the brand. There's loads of measurables that sit behind that particular type of target. So get down to the measurables if you can, and that gives you the evidence again. So once you've got those measurables, once you've got those tangible, you know, that tangible data, you can say that in order to raise brand awareness, we've done X, Y, and Z, and we've met these targets via this. Therefore, the overall brand awareness has now risen to this. So yeah, it's tricky. It's not the easiest, but there is lots of, I guess, what we might have deemed fluffy objectives that we've worked with in the past, and you know, it's where the grey areas creep in, and it's where it's really difficult to evidence if you haven't taken it one level deeper and just understood the real specifics and measurables behind that bigger piece. Hope that helps, Thea. I know that's a tricky one.
So next up, we've got a question around marketing and comms goals and how often these should be reviewed.
Yeah. So marketing and comms goals, we always say set once a year. So your strategy should be reviewed every year in line with your business objectives and your business plan. However, they should not be static. They should not be a piece of paper that sits on your desk that it's only reviewed annually. If you are seeing data that is going to influence one of your marketing and comms goals, you need to use that data intelligently and revise your goals. If you've set yourself a target that you've suddenly realized 3 years into a 12-year plan, it's just not a hope in hell's chance you're going to meet it. You know, revise it. That's okay. You know, you're not setting yourself up for failing here, but it's about being realistic. Sometimes when we're making these projections, we don't know. Sometimes even with business projections, they are, you know, they're a best guess or a, you know, an intelligent guess, but they're not always set in stone. There's not always a scientific formula about how they're, you know, how they're derived. So if you find that you're partway through a year and you're either definitely going to miss a goal, or you've already smashed your 12-month goal 3 months in, even better, you know, revisit them. And what I would say is use the data to then reset them with a bit more strategic foundation and intelligence behind the targets. So, I mean, we're huge on data analytics and measurement at Fabric. You've got to use that data intelligently. Don't ignore it. It's your most important asset as a marketer. So if you set your target at 15 for the year, and by month 3 you're on 25, that gives you some real intelligence around, actually, in a 3-month period, this is what's achievable. Now, if we go hard for the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, how can we uplift that first target and the second quarter and the third target to now set a more realistic end goal? So there's no hard or fast rule to this. It's not a case of review them every month, review them every quarter, review them every year. Take a real common sense approach to this. You don't want to be reviewing them every day and changing them from here to there. My advice would be, if you do revise your targets, which is totally cool, get them back in front of your senior team and get them to sign them off again. Make sure you've got the evidence as to why you're changing them. So, X, Y, and Z has happened. Therefore, we've revisited this target, which based on the data we have looks like this, and get them to agree it. Because you don't want to get to your year end and they go, well, you changed the goalpost halfway through the year, so you haven't met your objective or it's changed. So nothing wrong with revisiting them. I would advise that that's done at sensible points with data in mind, but always get the buy-in from your senior team. Keep them involved in the changes that you're making.
Cool. And then the last question that we've had in is, where would you start with aligning marketing goals with business objectives that aren't financially based?
So how to align them? Sorry, Maddie, you cut out just a touch at the beginning there. Yeah. So, I mean, they don't have to be financially based. I guess as Thea raised there with the, the brand awareness, it's not a financial one in its sense until you break it down. The example that I showed you in the presentation earlier about, refurbishing a facility, that's not financial unless you start to break it down. 9 times out of 10, there is a financial underlying objective that sits with any bigger objective. Every organization out there is there for a purpose to either sustain their operation or to grow it, whether it's a not-for-profit or whether it's a business in for profit. There is 9 times out of 10 a financial reason behind the bigger objective. So it's about using that overarching objective, but digging back into the specifics. What do we want to do with this and why? And then how can our marketing efforts really help affect that to therefore reach the bigger piece? So I would say there's always a financial somewhere behind there. And that's your measurable piece as well. Don't forget that your financial is your measurable piece essentially. And, if let's say it's not financial, it will be numbers based in some sense. So let's say, for example, we've got a visitor attraction and there's no cost to get into that attraction. It might be still to drive footfall in order to raise brand awareness, but drive and footfall is our measurable. So the brand awareness piece, we want more visitors in because essentially they'll spend more money once they're in the facility. There might not be a ticket related entry price, but we do want to increase footfall. So it's picking the measurables out of the bigger overarching fluffy kind of bits and really distilling that down into some sort of measurement framework that you can evidence against.
Awesome. Well, we've got 10 minutes or so left, so if anyone wants to send over any last questions, we've got time to answer, but otherwise we can let you all go get your lunch now.
Yeah, I mean, that's been great, guys. Thank you for all the questions. Hopefully that's been useful. As I said earlier, we're going to follow up with everybody individually. Just drop you a quick email. I'm going to open my diary for some one-to-ones. If anybody wants to take that opportunity up, please do. I know this is tough. I know there's lots of speculation around this, and there's it's not an easy thing to do dependent on your senior team. So really happy to take your specific example and just work through with you some kind of tangibles over a telephone call or over a Zoom. So we'll follow up with that. So any questions, don't feel like if you haven't had a chance to get them in, we won't answer them. Yeah, and hopefully that's been useful to everybody. We're going to be running a series of these over the next few weeks. So we've got another one coming up in a couple of weeks' time, which is all about building personas, which is my obsession in life. It's my favorite part of any type of marketing strategy. So getting into the mindset of your ideal buyer types. And again, there'll be a toolkit coming out for that. So if you're not already on our mailing list, sign up there and we'll get lots of really useful content and tools over to you in preparation for that one coming.
Yes, so thank you to everyone for attending. I hope you've all found the session useful. And I guess all that's left is for us to sign off and say goodbye. So thanks everyone.
Bye guys, enjoy your weekend, take care.
Bye.